Again, hit 3.
From any particular lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice. These are
If you're happy with your message, hit 1.
intended
To listen to your message, hit 2.
claim and
To erase it
disease
and
or
record again, hit 3.
medical or legal advice.
Seems like you're having some trouble. Okay, we've sent your message.
Please
Bye.
check out the Dreams Talk Radio website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. Also, if you want to keep our show free of advertising, just hit the donate button. Give $1 or $2. Remember, all prior shows are always free.
Good evening or morning, depending where you are, and welcome to S4, the voice of Force Moon Paranormal, coming to you live from FMP headquarters in the heart of the Cascade Mountains in Concrete, Washington. FMP is a highly active emergency response team for all aspects of the paranormal, from aggressive hauntings to alien interaction, Bigfoot and other cryptids, and everything in between is terrifying. S4 is the voice where we discuss these things in detail. Not only can you find S4 right here on Night Dreams Talk Radio, but for our local listeners, check out KSVU 90.1 FM from 10 to 12 Saturdays with pre-recorded shows. So, folks, tonight, it's already February 16th. 2 more days and it's my birthday. But my party's next week. It's okay, though. So tonight we focus on eastern Skagit and Snohomish counties and Whatcom. Haunted locations, UFO reports, and Bigfoot reports, so don't miss out. So tonight with us, we have Cole Wigleitner, our FMP Lore and Culture Research Specialist and owner of Statement of Sound DJ Services. Let's see who else. Michael Hall, because we're short tonight. Yeah, so Michael Hall's our paranormal lawyer and founder of UFOI team. So how are we doing tonight, guys?
Hey, doing well. We're digging out from the snow, which is finally melting.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah, it's about 2 foot here. 2 foot. It's melting rapidly, but it's still close to 2 foot. All the roads are clear, though.
Yeah.
How are you looking, Cole?
Well, we just moved into a new house in Cape Horn, right down the road from you, and it got about 2.5 feet here, but it's all starting to fall off the roof, and when you step into my house, all you hear is thump, thump, thump from it all falling off.
Right. Yeah, I'm tinkering here.
So it's not too bad here. It's about 35 degrees in Skagit County, like in the mountains here right now, so a little chilly. I'm sitting outside on the porch having a cigarette and watching the skies.
Okay.
Wow, you sound really good for sitting out on the porch. You got some good audio.
Well, yeah. Well, so inside my house, it's like a freaking Faraday cage because I can't get any signal on anything inside the house.
Interesting.
Yeah. So in order to actually use my phone, I have to walk out onto the porch.
Yeah. Well, that could be useful for some privacy situations. So it's not bad.
Yeah, but well, we got internet coming in a week, so we'll see what happens. But
oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, won't be too bad.
Well, Cole,
We're secluded up here.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, how did you get around during the snow when it really was deep out there?
I didn't. My wife and my kids stayed with my mother-in-law, and I stayed here and by myself and resorted to cannibalism.
What does that mean?
Started eating my fingernails. I was getting so bored.
Oh, there you go. I see.
And that was, that was most of upriver.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't a lot moving except for down our street. There was a guy in a little Honda Civic that barreling through that snow.
He didn't go off into the ditch?
Going. No, he was doing really well, actually.
Wow.
It wasn't, but this year was weird. It wasn't our normal type of snow where it's very heavy, very wet. It was very fine powdered snow. So as long as you got a good running start, you actually could go pretty far.
Now, you know, let's talk about weather for a minute. So what we're experiencing now, when you look back, is actually a normal February winter for Washington State. The difference is we haven't had a winter like this in years.
Right.
So I guess my point is, when you talk about climate change and global warming, and are we really experiencing global warming? Or is this normal?
Well, it's
What do you
weird
think?
because in some places right now it's normal. Like we are getting our normal winters that we're supposed to in Washington State. But up in Canada and Alberta and Saskatchewan, like my parents have no snow at their house.
Okay.
Which is very abnormal for this time of year.
Well, I also know, and maybe one of you guys can clarify this for me. And folks, later on in the show, we are going to have Jamie Justice, a local. She's been living up here many generations, knows a lot of the stories about Devil's Tower, Northern State, has had her own UFO encounters up here and whatnot. And we're going to have her on here in a little bit to tell her stories. Because all the guests that we were going to have on tonight, well, I know, Dretta's husband had to go to the doctor, so you got to take care of family. I know Megan's tired, so Megan went to bed early. And so we have a very small show tonight. Cole, how long have you lived up here?
Well, I've been in Washington State for about 9 years, but I've lived in the concrete area for about 5.
Okay. Have you heard much about Devil's Tower?
You know what? Devil's Tower, I hadn't, other than all the people getting arrested up there.
And that's recently. And,
Yeah.
And that's where you have to put out, if you have a paranormal team, or if you think you're a paranormal investigator, you don't go on private property. If there's a sign up, if there's a gate closed, well, obviously that means you don't go in there. And, it's not all paranormal teams that are going in there getting arrested. A lot of it's kids that want to go up there and party because they think it's haunted and it's just a cool place to go. But, and then you talk about Northern State, and you got all these people trying to break into Northern State during Halloween time because, oh my God, it's haunted. We got to go in there and see us a spirit. And they see a spirit, and they run out screaming like Zach Baggins. But, yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and, I know Chris is listening, but Chris sent me a message earlier talking about, these people. So we're going to go ghost busting until they see one. And then they stop ghost busting. Have you ever noticed that, Michael?
Yeah, well, you're right. There's a whole lot of let's say surface paranormal investigators out there that want to run across something that they've heard about or they see on television. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of people now figuring out that this isn't just fun and games, and this isn't just something to do to spend some time out having a fun time, but that it's a reality. And when the reality comes down to changing their paradigm, they freak out. A lot of people, I mean, people just think they can handle it, but indeed, the whole idea is that in ufology and in any kind of paranormal research, when the rubber meets the road, you got to be prepared for reality.
Well, that's why we had paranormal protection training again today. I mean, we talked about it on the show last week, but we actually did team training on it today. And we're going to do it again probably closer because I know one of your UFOI team members wanted to come up and go to it, but didn't make it.
Yeah. Yeah, Nikki was trying to get up there, but couldn't make it this time. She wants to let me tell her when the next training would be, because she wants to show up. So let me know.
Actually, while I've got you here, actually we're doing legal training next month, so I wanted you to come up and do the legal training side of it next month.
Okay.
So we'll coordinate that off show.
Definitely.
But you heard it first right here on S4, folks. Yes, next month's training is on the legalities of the paranormal with Michael Hall. And we had fun today. It was a fun training, and got a lot accomplished, actually.
I will say, as a person who has never had a big experience, like, there's little things that I've seen and heard that could have been, but nothing that was full solid in my mind. That's what it was. And so, as that person, I am interested in it. And yes, in certain ways, I do kind of seek it out. But I also will fully admit that I am the first person that, as soon as I see it, will do the Scooby-Doo legs and get out of there as quick as possible.
No, we'll keep you. We'll keep you in the house. And
oh, great! I'm the sacrifice.
No, we're all staying in the house. Who was it? I can't remember who told the story, but they had a supposed Navy SEAL friend who wanted to investigate, and coming from the military aspect, we don't run away from much. We usually run towards it. But the investigator, he's on this team, and the investigator went towards the noise, and he went screaming outside, which surprised me coming from a Navy SEAL. And we kind of came upon the conclusion that he may have been a Navy SEAL, but he's never been to combat, and that'd be the difference. So UFOs. So I do, second hour we're going to talk UFOs. Third hour we're going to talk about Bigfoot and cryptids in the Cascades. And I'm covering the Cascades because I have reports that range from Glacier, Washington, Darrington, Concrete, and other areas. So we're just going to cover the Cascades on the northern side. And I know you've got stories, Michael.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So while I'm trying to get our guest in, could you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the Pleiades? And I believe you took your team up on the Pleiades mountain range, did you not?
Yeah. If people don't really understand what you're talking about, the Pleiades is a group of peaks up north central Washington State by Mount Baker, actually, very close to the Canadian border. And it's kind of like fortuitous and interesting that there's a mountain up there called the Pleiades, because when you go up towards Mount Baker, there is a very famous lookout area called Artist Point. It's basically the farthest part you can get to on Highway 542 as you're heading east from Bellingham, Washington. You just keep going until the road ends, and all of a sudden you're up in the foothills, the very high peaks of Mount Baker, and you get to look north to the Canadian border and see these mountains called the Pleiades. But also at night, you'll see the real Pleiades star system shining bright, very brightly, right over the top of them as well. And that is some strange activity and anomalous craft and lights that are seen up there many, many times, where the UFO I-Team has pretty much made an annual safari investigation up to a little town of Glacier, Washington, where we kind of have our gathering spot, and then make the trip up there for sky watching UFOs and very interesting situations that people have reported up there. I'll just report on a couple of them that we have run across during our investigations up there with the UFOI team, just to kind of get the people up to speed on what's going on. One of the first things that drew us to this area of Mount Baker was a really amazing report from a biker, a Harley-Davidson biker guy who was basically living up in this small mountain community called Glacier. And he was coming home late at night, about midnight, I believe he said, going into the small town of Glacier on Highway 542. And as he's going down the road on his bike, he says over the top of his head, coming from behind him, all of a sudden, about treetop level, he says, there's this massive glowing orange and yellow pyramid shape, flying object that is lighting up the road in the middle of the night just by its luminosity. And the thing travels out in front of him over the highway and goes ahead of him just about 100 feet or so, and then takes a sharp left, this object, and starts hovering over the Nooksack River, which is just paralleling the highway at that point. Nooksack River is quite a large rushing river, and this massive, he said it was probably maybe 30 feet at the base of this triangle pyramid shape, and it was hovering over the river. He stopped his bike and got off and just was watching dumbfounded as this silent object was just hovering low over the river when it basically let down three glowing tentacles, he calls them, into the river, and started what he was noticing, slurping water out of the river into the craft. Now he's looking around trying to find someone that can witness this with him because he's alone on his bike. There are no houses around. There's no people, no traffic coming by at all, which is typical, in those kinds of sighting situations. And he can't find anyone to witness this with him, so he's just intent in getting all the details he possibly can in this sighting. He doesn't know how long it's going to last. He says after about 3 or so minutes, the tentacles stopped slurping the water, and they were pulled into the bottom, the flat bottom of this pyramid-shaped glowing object. And then the object started just gliding slowly away down the river, away from the biker on the side of the bank. When at one point he says that it wasn't very long, and all of a sudden 2 Black Hawk-style helicopters, military helicopters, come screaming up the river towards this object. And when the Black Hawk helicopters came into view of the witness, the pyramid-shaped object just zipped off as quickly. He couldn't even believe how fast this thing went. He says that from his position, he saw it disappear behind Mount Baker, which he calculated at that point from that, and we've investigated to determine how far away he was from this Mount Baker area. He says the object disappeared basically a 10-mile stretch from that point in the river to the behind the mountain in like 2 seconds. That's how fast this thing was traveling. And of course the helicopters had no chance of even catching this thing, but they kept on going down the river, chasing it anyway.
And this was pyramid shaped?
This was pyramid shaped, but not a 4-sided pyramid. It was only a 3-sided triangular kind of pyramid. which was very unique. If someone's going to make this story up, you would think, yeah, they'd come up with something like a normal four-sided pyramid, but it wasn't. Very distinct and unique. And it was glowing orange, had these tentacles that seemed to kind of be very flexible and coming out of the bottom of the craft. Matter of fact, we had our forensic sketch artist, Brian Snowdy, come along with us on our last investigation to interview this witness and to actually create a drawing, a painting actually, of the craft from the description that the witness gave. And the witness said this is exactly what he saw. He even had, in the painting, he had the river in the background, the trees, and the stars in the sky. And it was quite a painting, which you can find on the UFO I-Team Facebook page if you want to take a look at that as well. You've got to scroll down quite a ways to find it, but it's there. And that was one of the things that brought us to the Mount Baker area, hearing that story and then going up and investigating it.
Michael?
Yes, Cole.
When was your last interview with that gentleman?
Okay, that would have been last July.
Okay.
This last summer. And I know the gentleman real well. He's very believable and doesn't want any notoriety at all. So I'm not using his name or trying to describe him in very detail. But it took us probably 2 different summers to go up there and befriend the guy and let him know that we weren't there just to take advantage of his story, but we just wanted to hear the details. So
Do you remember what year the sighting was?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact year, but I know it was within 5 years ago. Let's put it that way. And I definitely have to go in and get the details again this next summer to try to see if we can pinpoint the exact date, if possible. It was in the summertime. It was warm enough that, he was out in the weather, or in the nice summer weather at midnight.
Okay, so Jamie, Are you with us tonight?
I am.
Excellent. So, for this is Jamie's first time actually on S4. She's actually my neighbor across the field. Been living up here in Concrete. How many generations now?
Third.
Third generation. So when it comes to the history and some of the hot spots in the Cascades and the upriver community, she would be the go-to.
Wonderful.
Well, now, right here on Haystack, there's the light that bounces up and down above the road every July and August.
And we need to get UFO I-Team up here to work with FMP on identifying that and seeing what's going on. Because, I love having you on the show because I can tell you right now, just hiking up Haystack, and coming from my perspective, I want to get EMF reading. There's a whole lot I want to do on this mountain just because you have the feel of being watched. You have a whole lot.
Absolutely.
You have a whole lot of different activity. But on that note, the history of Haystack specifically, I mean, it used to be a road that went all the way to Darrington. And didn't it go across Concrete Sauk Valley Road and was actually a ferry that went across the river?
Yes, there was, before the bridge was built.
Right. So that's a lot of traffic, and that's a lot of history as far as, people getting in wrecks, people dying, spirits that could be stuck there, things of that nature.
Yeah, there's quite a few deaths on Sauk Valley Road, as a matter of fact. Up towards Finney Creek.
Yeah. And, then you bring in the Bigfoot. I mean, there's tons of Bigfoot activity and reports just on Upper Finney alone, let alone South Skagit Highway.
Yeah, Upper Finney, it's depending on how far you go up. If you go up towards like G Lake up at the top, it gets really spooky there at night.
Which one?
Up by G Lake, up there, it's like midway between here and I'd say it's up past Finney. It's up higher than Finney. Like I think it's double. Yeah.
G Point.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Now my uncle goes up there and has a hunting party every hunting season. So I've been up there, and it's. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
So
if you want to go see something spooky, you go up the Sock Swaddle. If you go up towards Buck Creek up there on the Swaddle, there's a Indian cemetery up there, and that place is the spookiest place by far that I've ever been. You can hear like a heartbeat or a drum beat or something. You don't hear birds chirping. You can't hear any noise. You don't hear water from any of the creeks or anything. It's just this really heavy silence except for that beating. And I don't know what that beating sound is, but it is scary up there.
I've heard multiple reports of that from the Darrington community, from various people. Because we did do a Forest Moon Paranormal, basically a paranormal discussion in Darrington one time. Never got back there to carry on because we were going to do a monthly discussion there, but did one and didn't make it back. So yeah, there's a lot of activity in Darrington. There's a lot of UFO activity on Whitehorse, and just the Mountain Loop Pass alone brings a whole lot of reports.
Yes.
Now, Michael, have you guys ever gone on Mountain Loop Highway at all?
Funny you should ask. This is very interesting that you sign a synchronicity that you actually brought that up, because I was about ready when you guys were talking a little earlier. It just piqued my memory. This was about, Washington Pass, right? Going up over Highway 2.
Okay.
Is that the North Cascade route?
That goes through Index and Gold Bar, correct?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
Washington Pass?
Yeah, Washington Pass. Yeah.
Yeah, we have Washington and Rainy Pass up 20 going towards Winthrop.
Okay, that's the one. 20. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Highway 20. Okay, so I got to tell you a great story if you want to hear it. It's about missing time and possible alien abduction on Washington Pass.
Okay.
And this happened to me. It was probably about 10 years ago by now. I was going over to a little town called Molson, Washington, which is in the very center of the state of Washington, right on the Canadian border. I had purchased some property out there in this area, and I was going basically making multiple trips over to north central Washington State to check on the property and do the final paperwork and those kinds of things. And my first trip over Washington Pass to get there, since it's such a northern route that I had to take to get there anyway, I decided to go as far north as I possibly could to go across the Cascade Mountains. And at one point, there is a massive glacier at the very top of the pass that is there all year long. It never melts. Matter of fact, I was there in July this first time. And it was so impressive that I pulled off to the side of the highway just to kind of look at the glacier and get some photographs, because it literally comes right down to the edge of the road, and it's quite unique. But when you look down the valley from that top point up there by Washington Pass, you see this unobstructed view of literally thousands and thousands of feet below you. and the whole looking west, the whole basically western Washington state. And I was deciding to take a couple of pictures up there, selfies basically, when I put my camera on my hood of my Isuzu Trooper. I call her Izzy, my bug out vehicle. And got some real cool selfies of me standing there with the valley behind me and the beautiful blue sky that day. So I decided to take those pictures and then get on my wade back down or on the other side of the mountain and get over to the property. So when I come back home, I didn't notice anything unique or different while I was there. But when I get back home next couple days and I'm back at work at my law office, and I noticed that when I got to work early in the morning, that the clock on my wall at the law office seemed like about 15 minutes fast. And I thought that was kind of weird because my watch basically was 15 minutes slow, and I figured, well, wait a minute, could it be the clock on the wall is fast, or my watch is slow? So what I did is check the old computer, and of course, I'm noticing now that my watch is the one that's slow, about 15 minutes. And I didn't think much of it. I just changed my watch. But then when I went home that evening after work that day, this was like a Monday, I noticed when I turned my car on that the digital clock in my car was also 15 minutes slow. And I thought, whoa, what a synchronicity that is, that my wristwatch and my wristwatch was an analog watch, by the way. It was not a digital clock. They were both 15 minutes slow. And I got really curious at that point, and I decided to take note of that and write it down on my little notepad. But here's the kicker. When I got home that night, at that point I was diabetic. And I did my blood sugars, in the morning, in the evening, and that kind of thing. And that night when I was taking my blood sugar test to get ready to do some insulin injections, I noticed that my glucose meter, which has a digital clock in it as well, was 15 minutes slow as well. Now, the interesting thing is that my glucose meter was in the car, that I stopped on the pass. My digital clock on the car was there, of course, and of course my wristwatch. So I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of strange. When I started looking at some of the details of the selfies that I took up on Washington Pass, there were some very distinct saucer-shaped, or let's say ovoid craft in the background, that when I blow them up in the background, because I'm taking a selfie of myself off the hood of my car with the valley below me, there are multiple objects in the sky that are very anomalous. So anyway, that's my story about Washington Pass. And I thought, wow, kind of weird that you even asked that question tonight.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sure.
And well, I'm only asking because I know there's going to be people out there that would want to know too. From the story you were just saying, outside of when you're talking about seeing the craft, what were you thinking alien abduction? Where would that have come from? The 15 minutes. What do you think happened during that 15 minutes?
Okay, well, that's the thing. I run this group called the UFO I Team. We hear all these stories, of people have missing time they can't account for. And then, of course, some of them get regressed hypnotically, because we do have even experts in our group that regress folks, hypnotically, as well as going to other, hypnotherapists and getting the same kind of results. They'll tell the stories of being abducted, supposedly, and those 15 minutes or an hour or whatever time that they're missing seem to correspond to a time frame when they are being abducted. And of course, 15 minutes on a watch losing time really doesn't make a whole lot of difference as far as the reality of an abduction goes. People can be abducted for hours on end and basically only have a missing time of a few minutes in some cases. So that's kind of why I went there with the thought of what is the synchronicity, what is the percentage, the strangeness of having three different watches, two digital and one analog, being off at the same time, being in the same location. I thought that was kind of weird.
Now, with that, Michael, it could be abduction, and it could also be electrical anomalous, interference due to the craft.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we have also thought about the UFO I-Team's foray to Takalaka Lake as well, is that we had, in that incident, we had multiple team members' car batteries just die in the middle of the night. So much so that we had to get they had to get jumped in the next morning to start their car engines again. And it wasn't just the UFO I-Team that happened with that magnetic anomaly issue. There were other campers in the area of the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. At least 3 other campers in the area complained as well that their vehicles or their camp trailers just totally lost power in the middle of the night.
Can I ask you a question, Michael?
Of course.
Your wristwatch at that time, you said it was analog, but was it battery run or was it spun?
Oh, it was not spun. No, it was one of those battery powered with the quartz timing in it.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, I'd like to have one of those spin watches where you could actually wind it. And those are classic, but I didn't have that. And if that was off by 15 minutes as well, that's one heck of a story. That's insane. Yes.
The aliens, unwound it.
Well, yeah.
Like that. Well, that's just rude.
Well, we've all heard those stories of different electronic interference with, actually, I've told this story on FMP before, that we at Takalaka Lake, the UFO I-Team actually had a car, an actual vehicle that didn't turn itself, but it got turned into a bar magnet at the site that we were camping at overnight. In other words, if you took a compass, and it took us a while to figure this out, but once we figured out it was the vehicle and it wasn't just a vortex anomaly in the area, we took multiple compasses, 2 analog, just basically Boy Scout compasses, and one of them was a digital compass off of a GPS unit that one of the members had. And we went around the car, and basically the front of the car had a magnetic pole pointing away from the front of the car, in front of the vehicle. When you went to the back of the vehicle, the magnetic north was pointing behind the vehicle, the very opposite way. And it is so strange. Matter of fact, the owner of the vehicle, Dan Weiss, who is the executive producer for Ambition Pictures, they were there with us recording the UFO I-Team on our investigation and doing some videoing. He took the car. He said it's a late model vehicle, very new, and he took it back to the leasing agent and said, "What's up with this car? It's got a magnet. It's totally magnetized." And they tested other make and model vehicles that were the same, and didn't come up with an anomaly like that at all. Matter of fact, they said they've never seen this kind of a thing happen to a vehicle, as well as the digital clock on that vehicle itself reset itself basically to the default time of 12 p.m. And was we recorded that as well, and that the dealership, they had no idea how that clock could actually be reset to the factory specifications by accident, or anybody could even do it themselves if they wanted to redo it. It was like it was right off the assembly line, but it was magnetized.
And that was when you went to Mount Adams, correct?
Yeah, yes, that was what we call the
E-City Ranch.
E-City Ranch.
Yeah.
The Mount Adams incident is what we've been calling. We had in a span of 4 days, we had UFO up close and personal sightings that we caught on videotape. By the way, we had Bigfoot anomalies. We had even castings of large Bigfoot footprints. And then, of course, we had the magnetic anomalies and the vortex situation at Takalak Lake, and that's where we had the missing time. Of course, I didn't tell you about the missing time yet at Takalak Lake. That was more than an hour of missing time that we can scientifically prove that we had some kind of anomaly missing time there as well because of our instruments that we had with us.
Now, are you making plans of going back up there this summer?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's one of those things on our top of our priority is to get back. I mean, if we had all those fantastic and weird experiences at E-City Ranch and Takalak Lake in a span of 4 days, we have got to hone in and really, by the way, we weren't just getting those experiences around the lake and or at E-City Ranch. We actually had a team that climbed to the top of Mount Baker, 10,000 feet up, spent the night there on the mountain, and ran into strange aerial lights that were focusing on the top of their tents. That there's no way that another hiker or any airplane could be, doing this silent light thing on the roof of their tents at 3 a.m. That was strange.
It actually could have been, Michael. Back in 1939, they had an expedition up there that ended really bad, and people died up there.
Is that right? 1939.
Absolutely, 1939.
Well, and our team, the UFOI team, was up there sleeping overnight in the snow in the middle of this was in August. So that thing is snow covered year round. And boy, I tell you what, our guys were saying that they were like hypothermic, and had to get into their tents and sleeping bags early that night just to survive the night.
Yeah, they died in July of 1939, as a matter of fact.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you are quite a paranormal historian there, Jamie. I really appreciate all this input because between all of us here on the show, we can kind of commiserate with one another and corroborate some of these things that are going on.
Yeah, and when I was talking about Seattle and the strange noise at the Indian Cemetery, they actually had a TV program. I don't remember who did it, but they were in search of Bigfoot. And they had a whole group of people that went up there, and they said that they went like 20 miles into the forest, and they were talking about this big old adventure they went on. And I could tell where they were at on the TV, and they didn't hardly go 2 miles off of the road to Buck Creek up there, but they actually investigated it there as well.
Would that be before the Bigfoot? Oh, wait. No, BRFO. That's what I'm thinking of.
It was back 90s. It was in the 90s, I believe.
Okay, yeah, because sounds like something the BRFO would do, because the BRFO has actually gone up to Lake Tyee and investigated their reports as well. And that's a big Bigfoot research
organization.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, they went up there, and I think they spent like 3 days up there But where the bridge is washed out and stuff, where civilization pretty much ends and stuff, they only went maybe a half a mile past that. They didn't go 20 miles in, and they had a lot of strange sightings anyway.
Right. Well, that whole area is full. I mean, and that's a common theme. Is a lot of times if you go into Native American, tribal land, you'll find skinwalkers. You will find a lot of native spirits. You'll find a lot of cryptids that we don't even know about that are tribal based.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite common. Now I want to pick your brain real quick about Devil's Tower because you hear all these, you hear all these stories about, oh my God, so and so died there, and I believe there have been deaths there. I'm not doubting that, but you have all these paranormal teams that, we got to get in there, and they break the law, they go into private property, and we don't condone that. But tell us about the history of Devil's Tower that you know.
Okay, well, back when the quarry was going, as far as I know, nobody ever even died up there in an accident. And the only reason that I can say that is they had they had really big safety things at the cement plant. And they used to get silver certificates. They were like $2 bills and stuff for the certain amount of safety, they went through without accidents and stuff. Mm-hmm. And there were very few deaths whatsoever during the entire time that the cement plants were open. But in 2012, there was a young man that they were up there partying and stuff, and he fell. They were right on the outer edge of the quarry towards the lake, and he fell, and it was on his hands and knees, and it was dark, and he couldn't see where he was going, and they thought he had stopped, but he ended up just plunging straight down about 60 feet down to his death, and that was in 2012. And the interesting story about that is one of the guys that was with him drinking said later that he almost fell in that exact same spot, and the kid that died, he said, grab a hold of my shoulder. He goes, hang on to me. And he said that he saved his life, but then he turned around and he fell later that night.
So that so that's just in 2012 though.
Yeah, and where the Devil's Tower thing actually came into effect, it was while I was in high school, and it would have been, I think, 1982 or 83. And what it was some kids that came up camping with their parents, and they were from like Seattle, and they just went in there and they spray painted and stuff like pentagrams, and I remember the original graffiti because we went up there a lot when we were kids, and it was just like kind of like the stereotypical devil worship stuff, but it was these kids from Seattle is what it was. There was no rituals. There was, none of that stuff at all. It was just kids that, spray painted the walls while their parents were camping with them.
They're just
and
graffiti.
That was, like yeah, and that was in the 80s. And then there was one boy, and that would have been in the 80s as well. He was at the cement plant that's lower, right by where Devil's Tower is. If you go down to the East Concrete one, he and his brothers had snuck out one night, and they were rolling on the cables. And the little brother, he was only 10 at the time, he was on the inside of one of those big cable spools, and he got scared because it was going too fast, and he stuck his head out to see where they were going, and it decapitated him, and he died. But other than that, I'm not aware of any deaths at all. There's been deaths in the lake, by the quarry, but they wouldn't have been associated with the quarry. Right. One of them was my cousin back in the 30s or 40s, I think it was. He drowned, and then there's been bodies pulled out, since, but they've all been deemed accidental.
And that's Lake Shannon that's behind it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Lake Shannon's... now, does not Lake Shannon go all the way to the Canadian border?
No.
It doesn't. Okay. It just you look at a map, it a lot bigger than it is. I think Baker goes to the Canadian border, though. Close to it.
Not quite.
Not quite, right. So we plan on doing some, mostly probably between Darrington and Concrete, doing some FMP expeditions. Basically base camp setup, Bigfoot investigations, things of that nature, and of course UFO. So for those that don't know, Skagit County is number 1 in the state for UFO reports. It is tied with Gig Harbor or Grays Harbor County. There we go, for Bigfoot reports. So we're right here.
Grays Harbor, that's interesting.
What? Great. You think Grays Harbor County? That's the Olympic Mountains.
Okay.
So
that makes better sense. Cause I can't imagine Bigfoot hanging out in Aberdeen.
No. And,
is that?
Go ahead.
Is that where the nuclear plant is?
Aberdeen. Aberdeen is, yes.
So that's not Bigfoot. That's just one of the guys who got too close to the reactor. We win.
And that's possible too. But no, up in the Olympic Mountains, there's a lot of Bigfoot reports that come in.
Are you all familiar with that movie? That movie that took place back. I think the movie was from the 80s, but it took place in the 70s, and it was the 4 or 5 guys that went up on the mountain, and the one didn't come back. They saw the light and it chased them off the mountain in the pickup truck, and then the guy that got left behind showed up at home like 2 months later. It was something like Ring of Fire or something like that.
No, it's Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, Travis Walton.
But Walton, Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, that was Travis.
Yeah,
that's a very famous story.
Oh yeah, and
that was a really interesting one.
Well, that story changed actually. Actually, last year is when the news story came out, or it might have been 2017. But yeah, they're loggers.
Oh no!
Huh?
They changed it. It wasn't real.
Oh no, it was real. But what happened is, they went they're loggers, and they're coming back down, and they saw a light in the sky. Travis jumped out. He went underneath the craft. And at the same time as he went under the craft is when the tractor beam shot down. So they didn't intentionally hurt him. He just happened to run underneath them when they shot their tractor beam down, and they killed him. So they didn't abduct him. They actually brought him onto the craft. They kept him for 5 days because they fixed him, revitalized him, brought him back to life, and then returned him. That's what he's coming out with now. Before, and that was an excellent movie. That had James Garner. Was it James Garner that was in it?
Yes, he was. He played the sheriff.
He played the sheriff, yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, in the movie, they really tore apart the team, the logging team, because they thought they killed him. And in all reality, well, he was abducted, but he wasn't actually. He was just taken to help him, essentially. So yeah, excellent movie.
Yeah, but when he came back, though, wasn't he a mess?
Say again?
Wasn't he a mess when he came back, though? He came back and he was like scared to death, and he wouldn't talk about what happened or anything.
Oh yeah, most definitely, and that's common. That's actually very common with most abductees because it's a traumatic event, traumatic experience.
Well, especially if you died.
Yeah, and I don't think he understood fully what happened. I mean, if you look at the Betty and the Barney Hill case, they don't have memories unless they're hypnotized or do go through hypnotherapy. But sometimes the memories are still fresh and they are very real. But
okay, I gotta ask then, because you guys are familiar with this and you have experience, and I know every person listening wants to know, what is up with like Cartman and the anal probes and stuff? Is that like a real thing? all the probes that happen and the scientific torment and torture and stuff?
Anal probes by
come on.
aliens? No.
Well, all this, when you hear about the alien abductions, just you're hearing stories and stuff, they're always talking about them probing or doing medical experimentation on them, real painful stuff and all that. Do they ever do nice things to them when they take them?
No, there have been cases where they've cured cancer, they've cured, some serious diseases and whatnot, but no, there's thousands of races out there. You got to understand that, and there's 16 documented races that are actually abducting, each with their own agenda. You got the gray hybrid program, which they're implanting alien hybrids in women, and now they're actually giving natural childbirth on Earth, which before they were actually. I know it all sounds far-fetched, but it's not. You have some races that are doing scientific experiments on humans, where you see, like in Travis with Fire in the Sky, the needle going through the eyeball. That is a common experiment they do.
What are they trying to do? Do you know?
Say again.
What are they trying to get out of it?
Yeah.
So I think that depends on the race again. There seems to be an interest in DNA. For example, they're checking DNA because if you look at most alien abductees, a good majority of them, when you ask them, they can tell you their parents were abducted, their grandparents were abducted, their great-great-grandparents were abducted. It goes down family lines. So what they're doing is checking DNA anomalies within generations. That's one scientific experiment we know they're doing.
I don't know if they want to be doing that up here now. We're a little bit far up in them our hills to be checking DNA.
Well, you got the Appalachians with that one too, in the Rocky Mountains.
Well, we're not quite as bad as Appalachians yet, but we're headed there.
I do got to tell you, when I first moved to Concrete, we moved from Bellingham. And we walked into Food Pavilion in Cedro Woolley. And we told the lady at the checked us out. She asked, so where do you guys live? Because we were buying brand new food for the new house, everything ready. And we're like, well, my mother-in-law just bought a house in Birdsview. And she's like, oh, you're going upriver. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And, sadly, that's the common attitude downriver. Is, oh, you're one of those people. Yeah. I'm one of those people. Just check my stuff out and let me go. Bye-bye.
I'm good with being one of those people now.
So
I was just going to say, I come from a long line of hill people myself, and we are a little bit odd ducks up here.
So this is what you need to do. You need to download dueling banjos on your phone.
No.
And just kick it off, in your pocket while they're staring at you.
With UFOs.
Michael, that's my ringtone. That's my ringtone.
No. Oh, God.
No.
There you go. It is. Good for you. I've got the X-Files for my ringtone.
What's up with the X-Files anyway?
Well, I think it's Chris Carter, the producer of that, the executive producer of that series. I think he was fed with some very interesting details from maybe insiders from the government in getting some of those stories out, because some of those stories are right out of the deep state, investigations that you hear about some of these UFOs and, cryptids and all sorts of strange things that show did for years and years. It was quite a production.
I love that show.
What was your favorite episode of the X-Files? Do you remember?
I think it was when Mulder was remembering what happened with his sister.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was a great one. His sister was Amanda. Was that her name?
Yeah.
I don't remember her name.
It was Amanda.
Yeah, great. Great stories about.
Now, I gotta say that I think the creepiest one out of all of them I saw, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was the parasitic creature. And the scene I remember that haunts me the most is when the guy goes into the outhouse and the creature was in the outhouse. And,
oh, God.
Well, he didn't get out of the outhouse. So, yeah, that'd be the creepiest one. Now, I just got done with Stranger Things.
Oh, yes.
Season 3 is coming out in July.
Fantastic.
Now,
May.
Say again?
May, not July.
The director said it was going to be in July.
It's advertising on Netflix as May 13th, I think.
Well, I hope it is. Sooner the better. I would like to get that cast on S4.
Oh, wouldn't that be awesome?
Well, if you look at the Upside Down, as they call it.
Oh, yes.
Very, very similar to Other Dimensions, astral included. So, again, and we're going to do a specific show on S4 just on movies and TV shows and how they relate to the paranormal and with reality versus fiction. But, I got to say, they're getting their information from somewhere in many cases.
That's why I wouldn't want the cast. I'd want the Duffer Brothers themselves.
Oh, I'm working on it. Trust me. I sent one of the Duffer Brothers, I can't remember which one, but I sent one of the Duffer Brothers a message. But being as they're in California and they're always busy doing, writing.
Stranger Things?
Yeah, Stranger Things. I figure they're going to be busy.
Well, California must have a lot of Stranger Things.
Oh, and Kayla is in the chat room. She thought Darkness Falls. And that was, we talked about this on S4, the Darkness Falls episode, and that was where they cut the trees down in the Olympic Mountains, by the way. And those ancient bugs came out and were eating people.
Ew.
Oh, that's the X-Files you're talking about.
Yeah, the X-Files. The X-Files. Sorry, needed to clarify.
Wasn't that interesting that they picked the Olympic Peninsula with those old growth trees? And it was kind of a political statement, but I thought it was kind of cool where the writers of that show were not incredible, by the way. They came up with the idea that if you cut down an old growth tree, inside the tree are viruses, basically almost like the things you would find in Antarctica, that have been buried there for eons, and all of a sudden they're brought to the surface in these cores that they drill in there for scientific purposes. Same thing with the trees. The trees were holding inside of them these viruses that were killing people. That was interesting.
Yeah, it is.
You got to think of how dangerous that probably actually is.
You would think so.
But you think about it, they're digging in Antarctica, finding all these things. They could dig out Black Plague.
Or the black goo from the X-Files. You remember that?
Yeah.
Well, Trippin's in the chat room. Trippin just brought up the black alien goo is actually one of his favorite episodes of the X-Files.
Exactly. Oh, my God.
Does anyone know if that's streaming anywhere?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I've tried to find it. I mean, there are how many seasons? 9 of them? 9 seasons?
Sounds about right.
You can. I remember counting them one time. and I think there's like 220 or 202 episodes that you can binge on if you really wanted to. And I tell you what, there's some really awesome ones on there. One of my favorite episodes, you're not going to believe this, was it was called Jose Young from Outer Space, with Charles Nelson Riley. Was this famous author that was writing a story about UFOs, a novel, basically. And he was interviewing Scully about his book. And I think it was one of those times where David Duchovny was like holding out or, taking a rest from the series, because he wasn't even on some of those episodes. It was just Gillian Anderson. But this was a great episode with Charles Nelson Riley writing a novel called Jose Young from Outer Space. That's the name of the thing. And all of a sudden, these alien reproduction vehicles are being used in this episode by the military, faking alien abductions for some reason, when the alien reproduction vehicle and the alien military guys are actually abducted by a real UFO during the episode there.
That's karma.
What's that?
That's karma.
Oh, karma. There you go. Yeah.
So who remembers the TV show Warehouse 13?
Oh, God, I love it.
I don't.
Oh, that's when you look up. Warehouse 13 is another good one. But I'm not sure where you can find it.
Netflix.
Oh, really?
Netflix.
Yes, it is on Netflix, but it's missing a season. You have to get the last season somewhere else.
Okay.
We bought it.
That's okay, as long as I can watch the first few seasons. And the other one I do have is Thornwood.
Oh, now that's interesting. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, Thornwood. I've got both seasons of Thornwood.
How about V?
Now, are you talking Thornwood as Rose Red? That Thorn?
No. Okay. No, Thornwood's a TV show, a TV series that came out that was kind of like Doctor Who.
Oh, okay. Well, the Rose Red is pretty cool, though.
Torchwood.
Yeah, no, there you go, Torchwood. Now, Thornwood. Thornwood is another haunted spot, and it's down Fort Lewis area in a little town called Tillicum, right outside base. Yeah. Yeah,
it's Lakewood.
Yeah. Well.
But now that story, that gets you.
Yeah, that's Rose. Yeah, Rose Red was well done. Yeah, and Trippin's in the chat room. Yeah, so Torchwood is a spin-off of Doctor Who, but it's all alien.
Oh.
It's all alien based, and it's all. They do. I like the fairy episode too. They actually do an evil fairy episode of Torchwood. That's cool.
Now, like when I read your posts for like FMP and stuff, and you're talking the very first intro that you do, Eric, where you're talking about what all you are investigating, like from the Bigfoot, and you talk about cryptids and UFOs, alien abductions and stuff. Mm-hmm. How do you guys cover going from like hauntings to the UFOs to Bigfoot? And I'm not even sure what the cryptid things are. But do they all tie in together somehow, or are they all like completely separate, different things?
They're separate, but there's some out there that do think there's a connection. We haven't exactly found the direct connection to them all, other than energy potentially. Now with Bigfoot, and I know Michael will back me up on this to a degree, because no one's definite. There's no definite hard evidence for any of it. But
right.
With Bigfoot, now with the Bigfoot UFO connection, I've heard some reports where this craft lands, Bigfoot comes out of the craft, collects water and soil samples, gets back on the craft, and takes off. you hear other reports where if there's a UFO spotted and someone does see a Bigfoot's running away from the UFO. Now, I do have a theory on that. If aliens can abduct humans and have been abducting humans, why aren't they abducting Bigfoot as well? Which would explain why Bigfoot's terrified of UFOs.
There you go.
If they're after DNA and they're watching for DNA anomalies, it would make sense if they abducted Bigfoot as well, or even other cryptids.
Well, yeah, because we're still looking for DNA on Bigfoot.
And maybe this will be the year. But, you always say, maybe this will be the year. And, no, he's the best hide-and-seek player in the world.
Have they found... Have they found anything?
Michael?
Oh, yeah. Well, our good friend Melba Ketchum, Dr. Melba Ketchum, is actually come out with a detailed analysis, scientific analysis of Bigfoot hair and the DNA inside of it. And she has come to the conclusion, some startling facts, that it's partly human and partly not human, of no known genome. So basically a hybrid potentially. Some people obviously are saying that it's maybe even a multi-dimensional being. We've all heard these stories of Bigfoot being able to basically just disappear. Some people say it disappeared right in front of their eyes, or it can cloak itself. And people have said that they believe they felt something right behind them or in the area, but they could not see it. So all sorts of interesting Bigfoot stories out there that I think when it comes right down to it, as the famous Canadian ufologist Grant Cameron says, that everything is connected somehow. That everything, once we tip that first domino over, that knocks everything else down, we're going to find out that ghosts and ETs and UFOs and all those things, even fairy and the fae, all that stuff seems to be connected somehow when you get right down to it.
And it might be as simple as dimensions.
Yes.
And I'm right there with you, Michael, and with all the other interdimensional theorists out there that I do believe Bigfoot, and I've said it on the show many times, that, I do believe Bigfoot is interdimensional. Based on, again, when you try to get game cams out and the game cams malfunction only when Bigfoot's around. That would be an interdimensional sign. Right.
Matter of fact, I've got a great game cam story from Takalak Lake with the UFO I-Team. While we were up there doing all those other experiences that we had, one of our team members, Kevin Beagle, brings his game cam and straps it to a tree right next to our camp site and leaves it running all night long, hoping to catch something, because we had some wood knocks and stick breaks and basically sighting of shadows in the full moonlight in the forest, thinking that it could have been a Bigfoot activity. So what he did is in the morning he goes to check his game cam on the tree, and believe it or not, the game cam had been opened in the middle of the night and literally turned off. There's a switch you have to hit it to turn it off, and it was just sitting there open, having been turned off. So you never know how stealthy or that the Bigfoot can actually get around and not. They basically know when there is some kind of a camera in the area, from what I gather.
Now, Trippin is in the chat room asking, has anyone watched that Hellier yet? And I'm really not sure what he's talking about.
No.
Has anyone heard of Hellier?
No.
We watched First Man last night.
Which one?
Mm-mm.
Oh yeah,
First Man.
how was that? Was it good?
It was very good.
Well,
Very
tell us the
technical.
Tell us the basically story about this film and tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so it starts out as it is the story of Neil Armstrong.
Ah, okay.
Not only for the moon landing, but the years leading up to it, starting from the death of his daughter. So as most people know, his daughter died of cancer in 1961. And from that year to the actual moon landing is the story you follow. And it is just an amazing story filled with everything from the Gemini missions to the Apollo missions and everything that they had to do to actually make that happen. And it's actually weird because knowing the conspiracy theory that the moon landing actually didn't happen, the way they show the landing, both of the ideas fit.
What do you mean both?
So, watching the movie, you can actually see the fact that it might be fake and it might be real. The way they filmed it, it was perfect. Well, to me, they lost so many lives trying to get to the moon. There are so many people that saw the ships or the rockets leave the Earth. I honestly cannot take that away from those three men and all the men and women that helped get them there, that it didn't happen. I can't take that away from them. So I have to believe it happened.
Yeah, I can lean that way.
I think the anomaly that comes into play with all that, though, too, is when you hear, and they cut off the transmission, but when you actually hear Neil Armstrong talking to NASA, that they're not alone. They see something on the backside of the moon, and then they cut the transmission.
Yeah,
Say again?
Well, Jamie, what were you saying?
Oh, yeah, I was just the part about seeing something there. That part right there seems so real. You know what I mean? If they're up there on the moon like that, and everybody's expecting to be there alone, and they see something that shouldn't be there, that's really unsettling there.
My issue with that is everything can be faked. As they said, the whole moon landing itself could be faked. What if it's an ex-NASA employee that didn't make it onto that mission that decided to mess with the recordings?
Yeah, that's up to...
You know, like, that's the thing. It could be faked either way.
Now, recently, Izzy was bringing up that they're talking about the Mars Pathfinder. And I'm not sure if it was the actual Mars Pathfinder or if there's something else that they put on Mars that wasn't expected to make it very long because of technology. And a dust storm came in, and they thought they lost it because it was all solar powered. And they mourned. And they thought it was gone. And all of a sudden it pops back up, and it's spotless. Have you guys heard that story?
No.
That's really nice. The Martians to clean it up for them.
It was.
Yeah. Like, good old spit polish.
Could you imagine being up there, though? That's crazy. I mean, up on the moon, alone up there, there's so many things that could have been there, you know?
I had problems in concrete alone for 3 days. I don't think I could do the moon. Okay.
I mean, seriously, everybody just assumes that they're up there by themselves. But, I mean, come on. I mean, they're up on the moon.
And that's the thing. When the way they filmed this movie and the way he looks out into the vastness of space from the surface of the moon, it actually is kind of unsettling when you think about it. And I couldn't imagine being one of those men.
No.
The worst one for me would be the guy who was left on the return ship.
Oh,
one that
no
never got
kidding.
to go down. Like, your two friends are leaving you in the middle of space. And you don't know if they're coming back. Like, it just doesn't seem fair to me that they couldn't put 3 seats in the lander.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, you know, there's a very famous episode of the Frasier television show with Neil Armstrong. Did anyone see that?
No.
No.
Well, Neil Armstrong actually did a guest appearance on that very popular television series called Frasier. And the scenario was this, that Frasier was in a radio station, either bringing Neil Armstrong to an interview, or for some reason they were both in the same radio station at the same time. And Frasier gets into an argument with the woman at the receptionist at the front desk, while Neil Armstrong is walking into the studio, and behind the glass is actually talking with the host of the show who is going to interview them, and they were off mic, but in the episode you could hear what they were talking about inside the booth, while it was just Neil Armstrong and the interviewer, talking about the good old days, at NASA and stuff. And Neil Armstrong starts spilling his guts in the episode. Someone wrote this script, by the way, about that when they landed on the moon, there were aliens and spaceships, and they were being monitored the whole time they were there on the moon. And, of course, Frasier, who was interested in this whole story, didn't hear any of it because he's out in front arguing with the receptionist lady. It was supposed to be a comedy, kind of thing. But can you imagine Neil Armstrong agreeing to be part of a script that says that? That was the fascinating part.
Yeah, honestly, that's hard to imagine. The way
That's
he's
exactly what I was
portraying
saying. Go ahead.
He's not an easy man to get along with, it seems, in this movie. But he wasn't.
Now, getting back to Hellier real quick, Tripp is in the chat room and he said, we'd love to watch it and nitpick this one. Dave had the 2 traveling paranormal museum people on, and they're doing it. Not sure if it's supposed to be suspense, movie, documentary, because it sure as heck ain't investigative. But it's a good show. Look it up. It's hellier.tv. Go on YouTube and just look up hellier.tv on YouTube. I'll probably do that tomorrow.
For everyone asking, that's Hellier.
There you go.
Is that having anything to do with the Canadian official Paul Hellier, who has retired?
No, because this is about hauntings, and I believe Hellier is wasn't he the Minister of Defense or something in Canada?
Yes, right.
Yeah, and that would be he'd be UFO. This has to do with the Paranormal Museum.
Interesting.
So.
Hey, I got a question. Area 51. I'm sure it exists, and it's everything that they say it is. But my question is, why is it the government doesn't want us to know about it? they're afraid of panic, or what is the purpose of keeping that from us?
Of non-disclosure. Good question. And we talk about it all the time. So there's many theories as to there's many theories as to why the government wouldn't want UFOs and aliens exposed. One would be national defense. Not national defense in that, can you imagine if they told the American people that there are aliens and they can't stop them, they can't control them? Can you imagine the panic?
Well, it's kind of like we panic right now. We don't trust them that they're going to protect us and do anything for us anyway. I mean, what would we do if we panicked? It would just be like pandemonium, chaos or something, and that's what they're afraid of, or they're afraid of us overthrowing them.
Well, there's more.
No, you got to think money. You got to think money.
Money.
Okay? The entire stock market would crash, honestly.
Yep.
Ah, okay, there you go.
The stock market would crash. With some, it would destroy religion. Not all of them. Because one side of religion would say it was demons and God's coming back. The other ones would say, oh my God, there is no God. And it would divide religion. But the ironic part with that is you have the Pope, who's got his own telescope and has been watching this, and has actually come out and talked about aliens and said, we'd like to convert aliens to God, to Christianity.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean...
Good luck.
And then you go back historically, and what's the name of that treaty that... Wasn't it Eisenhower that signed the treaty with the aliens, Michael?
Yeah, that's the rumor. 1947 or so.
Well, I'm trying to remember the name of the treaty.
Yeah, I forget the name of it as well.
We just talked about this, I think, last week.
But the idea being that they were going to come up with an agreement that the aliens could continue to abduct people on the planet for their purposes of experimentation, as long as the U.S. government got technology in return. So that's one of the theories that this treaty was involved in.
That's kind of cool how they fit that into the Transformers movies.
They did, indeed.
I don't know, but what would it do? What would it do to religion if they found out that God was actually an alien then, and Earth was the experiment?
People would be really ticked off.
I mean, seriously, it is possible.
The religion of the flying spaghetti monster would be fine.
Exactly.
I'm just saying.
Now, getting back to the treaty, and I'm still trying to remember the name of this treaty, but when he signed the treaty, if you notice, fiber optics came out, and you always have the argument, well, humankind is smart enough to come up with this stuff, and I agree. But if you look at the time jump, all the technological advances that happened with a very short time period, cell phones, computers, internet, fiber optics, all jumped quickly. Now, Trippin is asking, what does the stock market have to do with 75% of the world that doesn't have anything to do with it? So, the stock market is indirectly affected globally. Because so many companies aren't in America. So the stock market would still be affected, I think. It's just my opinion.
Well, and I got to ask, what does he mean by 75% of the world doesn't have anything to do with it? Trip, can you explain that a little bit more, please? Because, the stock market affects every business in America, Canada, and our trading countries. So, therefore, it does affect almost every single person in the world that has any that goes to a store. If the stock market falls, the price of bread alone goes up. Every price goes up. Because there's an immediate shortage of everything.
Yeah, and Trippin's also saying, yeah, people are leaving churches more now than ever before. Recent natural disasters opened their eyes. And I would agree with that. I think, yeah, I mean, and I'm not going to get into politics. I already have a migraine. I don't need to discuss politics as well right now.
I have nothing to say.
Right. And so Trippin is saying poor people don't have stock. And again, agreed. But if the stock market crashes, you are still going to see everything in the economy go up. As far as bread prices, milk prices, I mean, yeah, no
oil and gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a huge one that will go up, and that will affect everyone. I'm sorry, that is a big one that affects every single price in any market.
And Nikki's in the chat room. Has anyone else noticed that a majority of sci-fi movies are based on real things? And yeah, we discussed that an hour ago. And I totally agree. They do. Sci-fi movies, even horror movies to an extent, and TV shows.
Okay, I found the name of the treaty that Eisenhower supposedly signed with the aliens in 1954. It was called the Greada
There
Treaty.
you go. Yeah,
It was called. It's spelled Greada, Greada.
And it can be found all over the internet.
Was it with the Autobots or the Decepticons?
No. But
No,
it is referenced. And that's what I like about Transformers. The Transformers actually hit on a lot of key points.
Transformers?
Yep, the movie.
Absolutely.
You're killing me.
No, not at all.
No, it's so in the newest ones that they're doing, the Last Night was the last one that they just had done a while ago, and they used the Knights Templar as an order, and the Order of Camelot as well.
I thought that was
they
very
used our own
intriguing,
human
too.
history that was really done well.
And I found that intriguing.
Yeah.
And
it was done very well that our own organizations from our past hid these aliens from the public for that many years and protected their identity.
Yeah, I didn't see that one tied into National Treasure. They hid that one there.
It was probably in a hieroglyph.
Well, hey, the kids hid E.T.
Oh, speaking of hieroglyphs, there's a lot of UFOs and aliens and hieroglyphs.
Uh-huh.
And that takes me back to God being an alien in the first place.
So I suggest any new listeners, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, look up Zechariah Sitchin, get his books. Eric von Daniken, I like his books, and Jacques Vallée. I think those are the three favorite authors of mine that go into the ancient alien theories.
I agree. I think they're ancient, all right. I do. I think there's something to that. Wouldn't that go to Stonehenge and all that too?
To an extent, you look at the Sphinx, you look at the pyramids. There's pyramids around this whole planet that are all pretty much the same built. You got them in Mexico. You got them in the Mayan culture. You've got them under the ocean. You've got them,
right.
I think we even have one here in the United States.
And doesn't that have something to do with pointing towards space or something, or some kind of like a portal or something?
Michael, you got to answer that one, Michael.
Well, yeah, the Great Pyramid at Giza and the pyramids around it there have always been related to the Orion constellation. Basically, the Orion's belt, configuration of stars is reflected in the placing of those pyramids in on the Giza Plateau, supposedly, and they can relate it back to the exact formation that Orion's belt looked like back when supposedly the pyramids were created thousands of years ago. And that's kind of why they figured that there was some kind of connection with Orion, or the Orion constellation, and either the makers of the pyramid, or they were basically connecting somehow with the Orion constellation in making those pyramids themselves. So there's lots of different theories of these pyramids being power plants somehow, being beacons, and, those kinds of things.
I have a theory on that. I think they're like ancient road maps.
There you go.
Pyramids, Stonehenge. I think they're the original crop circles.
Are they
And
real?
Crop circles? Very much so.
But I
Okay,
believe that
because-
they eventually just figured out that doing it to crops is a lot easier than doing it to a freaking pyramid.
But see, all those things are, when you sit there and watch, any of the shows about how how they're built or what their meanings are and stuff, that is so far advanced. I mean, there has to be something to them. I mean, it just doesn't make sense that, somebody's going to build a pyramid just simply to house a dead king. I mean, they talk about the afterlife, and it's aligned with, certain stars and this, that, and the other thing. It's got to be some kind of map. It's got to point to somewhere.
You look at how far the Incas had come. Like, their technological advances were astronomical.
I was just recently watching a documentary, too, where they actually said there were no tombs. There were no bodies in the pyramids. As much as they say, oh, this is the tomb of Amun-Ra, or name your pharaoh, but there were no there were no bodies in these pyramids. So that kind of throws that one out the window.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think they were made for something else. I mean, just to bury somebody, and then, like you said, if there's no bodies in them, that just kind of furthers it.
Transformers.
There could have, but that's the thing. Are we sure there was no bodies in that pyramid?
That's what some scientists are saying.
Yeah, but no, that's what I'm asking, Eric. Maybe there was just no human ones.
Well, that's possible too.
There you go.
What if it's not a tomb for a human,
And that's possible.
but a tomb for what we believe was a god at that point?
And that's very possible.
An actual god?
A deity.
Yeah,
A
so like
deity.
Ra.
Yeah. And that's very possible. But you would still,
That makes sense.
even if you're talking deity, you're talking soul matrix, so there'd still be remains.
Are we
As far
sure?
as I
We
know-
can't possibly know that.
Well,
We
Do
don't
you think-
we don't know what happens to an alien when it dies.
I thought they had
Unless
one
you
in
chop
Area
it.
51.
oh, they have several
Yeah, but it's
Area
sitting in
51 in
vinegar.
theory. In vinegar.
It's preserved.
So yeah, there are several races that are supposed to be at Area 51, specifically in S4, which is what the show is named after.
Dead or non-dead?
Both.
Both.
Yep. And that depends. That depends on who you listen to and who you follow. You know, you got different stories, and yeah, kind of take it with a grain of salt and do some research.
I do have to say, I hope we're not keeping one of the Predator ones.
I was just going to say, I feel sorry for the alien if we have them in captivity, because we are not equipped to handle something like that. Now, them, on the other hand, abducting us, them being superior beings and all, that would make sense. But I can't imagine what the poor fellas are sitting there doing, like, say, in Area 51 with our government people checking them out. I'm not feeling that.
So we have Nikki in the chat room, and she agrees that they're landmarks on the planet for ETs, and yeah, I would agree with that. I can't, and I'm sitting here trying to remember, but again, I've got a migraine, so it's hard to think. Trip is also saying there's a boat found buried outside one of the pyramids.
That's Noah's.
Noah? No, that's Mount Ararat.
He got lost.
On top of a pyramid. Oh. So, okay, moving to a different topic, because I want to hear what you got to say about Northern State, Jamie.
Oh, Northern State. I've been up there, and it's really a strange place, because a lot of the buildings are gone, for one. But when I went up there, it was in the 80s, and I went there with my grandmother. My grandmother graduated nursing school there back in 1932, and she worked in the men's D ward for the criminally insane. And we went up there. Job Corps, I don't believe, had been put in there yet or anything at the time. But we went out there, and if you look into the windows of the places, there's still like papers laying on the floor, like chart sheets and stuff, and various pieces of medical equipment. And I didn't see, any apparitions or anything, but you could imagine them. It was so real when you looked inside there. And the only thing wrong with those buildings, it had beautiful oak like stairways in it and stuff, and floors, and they were beautiful buildings. And the only thing wrong with them was the years after they shut them down, the windows getting broken and stuff like that, and they kind of went into ruin there. But that place, there's a lot of uneasy stuff going on there. I mean, they did those lobotomies, and so many people died up there, and there were, oh my God, tens of thousands, if I remember right, in the cemetery. They only had like a couple hundred in the one that was forgotten at the, I think it was Burlington High School or Sedgwick High School, went and they kind of restored it a little bit. But the stories up there are kind of, there's like angry men, like a really angry guy, and then the little girl, she's got a red ball. That one, I'm not sure where that comes from. And I don't know why a little girl would have been up there unless she had tuberculosis, because I know that they had TB people up there in the hospital, in the sanitarium too. But there's a lot of stories about like moaning and like hollering and scaring kind of stuff. And I can imagine the pain and torment that the people were in. When they shut the place down in, the late 70s, I think it was, they turned those people loose on the streets. And the ones that were criminally insane, of course, they went to, like, Silicon, down there. But the other ones, they just turned loose on the street. And just the unsettled people up there, it's crazy. They just, like, walked out of there. The doctors and nurses and stuff, it's like they left their equipment behind and stuff. And you could see, like, there was a children's area in one of the wings, as a matter of fact, because I remember it had little children's feet prints like walking towards like the bathroom or something. They were painted on there so the kids knew which way to go or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they still had that kind of stuff there. But then underneath of it, there's tunnels. And back in the 70s, they still had like jeeps down there, and they had stockpiles of like food stuff and all kinds of equipment. I think it was some kind of like a shelter or something like that for. It was military based anyway.
Well, and you know what's, since you mentioned that, you've got the National Guard Armory just down the road from Northern State, so that would make sense as far as it being military. But you've heard the rumors, and for listeners that aren't from the area, Northern State was a mental hospital. So you got Western State, which is again Steilacoom area, and you got Northern State, which is here in Cedarwoolley, Washington, and they opened. Correct me if I'm wrong. They opened it in the 1920s, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
they called it.
Say again.
They called it the Bug House. The Bug House, like BUG Bug House.
Okay. So we have, it's secure, it's locked up, nobody can go in there now. And a lot of that's because of vandalism, people breaking windows, people spray painting things, people being people, paranormal groups wanting to go in there and play. And so they've locked it off, it's got security, you can't go in there. But you can go in the dairy farm area. So at one point in its peak, Northern State Mental Hospital was completely self-contained. They had their own creamery. They had their own dairy farm. Everything they did, Northern State was a completely self-contained community, essentially, for the criminally insane, for all the. Think back in 1912, the 1900s. If you acted weird, or if, depression. Different kinds of
menopause.
Say again?
Menopause. There are menopausal women in there.
So anything that wasn't understood, they put them in Northern State.
Yep.
And they did lobotomies. They did electroshock therapy. They did all kinds of experimental crap on these sometimes innocent people. Not all of them were criminally insane. Not all of them had mental health issues. So what we find, because we have gone up there a couple times and investigated, again, FMP doesn't go to hotspots, generally speaking, but we go up there for training once a year, or two different hotspots. I think we're going to go to Fort Casey this year. But I've been up there a couple times. One with the Ghost Crew of Canada, the Haunted Crew of Canada with Mike Morin. And Markham, our scientist, was it Markham? Yeah, Markham, our scientist, went with us. And we tried out the paranormal puck. And we actually got names. Now, this was last year. I can't remember the names. But what was cool, and that was my first experience using the paranormal puck, we were actually sitting in the dairy barn, and we asked what the spirit did for employment there. And the name cow came up. we looked at each other and were like, huh. So did you milk the cows? And, it said yes. And we actually got intelligent communication. But what you find in the dairy, the dairy farm area is the spirits there are calm. They're more peaceful. They're sad, but they're not malevolent. You go to the creamery.
They're like slow.
Say again?
They're kind of like slow and easy going, like.
Well, if you think about it, the criminally insane, they're going to be locked up and secure. The more violent ones that might not be criminally insane or seen more of a danger, kind of like what we see in the prisons today. The less, the less violent, they go out and pick up garbage along the highway, whatnot. I can see it being the same. I can see it being the same in Northern State. If they're just there, they're depressed. Put them in the, get them out as caretakers of the animals, or milking the cows. taking care of the horses,
Well,
things of that
you,
nature.
you know, the interesting thing about that was not only that it was self-contained, but it actually was turning a profit, quite a large profit. And the people that were there running it, the patients that were there and stuff, like you were saying when you're talking about how they weren't benevolent or anything, that's because the ones that they had out there were like kind of, some of them were like they were retarded a little bit. You know, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but they were slower, just like depressed. And you know, just those are the ones, like you're saying, that weren't criminally insane, but they did everything. They had the chickens, they had the cows, they had the gardening. They even had their own crematorium in there. You know, I mean, it was just a little hubbub of its own, and the people that were there, they were like innocent people that they did just horrible experimentations with and stuff.
And the closer you get to the actual mental hospital property is where you find more malevolent spirits. Even as far as the crematorium. We've gone to the crematorium and actually got, you know, some pretty negative. You've got shadows. You've got a whole lot more negative activity going on. And, you know, then, of course, you go across the creek, across the bridge, and that's where the fences are, and that's where you can't get on the property. And Nikki's saying residual energy. Some of it is, I would agree. But with residual energy, you won't have intelligent communication. And that would be the difference between, you know, I see the residual energy or the reoccurring spirits as basically as a record player playing over and over again. But with those, you won't get the EVPs. You won't get communication because it's not intelligent. It's just energy replaying itself, and usually over like anniversary periods and whatnot. But these particular spirits in the dairy farm are actually communicating back and forth, so it's not residual particularly. And
Eric,
yeah, go ahead.
can I just say for all of our local listeners that are listening on Spreaker and on KSVU, the cemetery there that's right beside the dairy farm, if you just go a little bit farther up the highway there, there is a nice parking lot there for you to go to. The cemetery is a very beautiful area. If any of our locals are listeners or have a day off or just some extra time, head on up there, throw some flowers down for those people. A lot of them are never, they don't get that a lot.
Especially the lost ones.
Yeah, and I try and make at least 2 trips up there a year with flowers and leave them. I just leave mine there's a large marble slab as a memoriam for all the people that died there.
And you know what irritates me about the cemetery, I think the most, is all the headstones. They're not really headstones, they're metal plates, and they're numbers. They don't have names. There is only one headstone on that whole cemetery that has a name to it. And I can't remember the name. I've got a picture of it because we actually caught an orb on the headstone. And it's blue. It's not dust. It's not an insect. It's a blue metallic orb.
And it's at the very back of the cemetery.
Exactly, against the fence. And that's the only one with a name.
Yeah. But aren't there like 1,600 people that are missing still? I mean, because after it was closed down and they went into the crematorium, they found like the urns and stuff like that, and they weren't named, they weren't marked or anything, and there was something like 1,600 of them they could not identify. Is that about the right number?
I'm not the one versed in history. My historian couldn't make it tonight, and she's done extensive documentation and research on Northern State. What I like to do is, go back there, get some names from EVPs, and actually try to track them, see if they're doctors. There's actually one spirit that communicated, and I'm trying to remember how that went. We have a suspicion that they might have been a therapist, because back then they didn't call themselves psychiatrists. I don't think. Don't get me wrong. When did psychiatry start? Because this may have been a patient that was actually a therapist. I'm not sure.
Well, psychiatry started long before that hospital.
Right, and I agree. But this individual, I think the word they said was empath, because we asked them what their field was or what they did at Northern State, and they said empath. Which, if you look in the 1900s, you say empath, I automatically think therapist.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very interesting trip that we took that particular time. And that's why we go to a spot like that with the team for training, because we take our new team, our 2 new team members there, and we show them how the equipment works, because you're going to get something. Whether it's
I would think back then, though, there was a huge difference between psychiatrist and therapist.
And quite possibly, again, it's
a therapist is there for the person. A psychiatrist is there to study.
True. I just thought it was really intriguing that a spirit would say empath, coming from that time era. Yeah.
But that's not a word that I honestly ever hardly heard before I joined this group.
And very
like
true.
Honestly, no. Like you don't. It's not a word that's used quite often, and even throughout history, it hasn't been used.
No. And coming through an EVP in a.
So what do you think? What are you thinking then?
I still think it was a patient that was a therapist, to be honest with you.
No, I get that part, but using the word empath, like you were saying, that wasn't a word, that they would have used back then. What would cause a spirit from that time era or something that would use a word that would be so much more modern? I'm not sure if I'm wording that right.
So,
to me,
I think what you mean, Cole, is people use the word today, empath, too often. They've watered it down. Correct?
Yeah. Well, that, and also, maybe being dead so long, as Spirit himself, he ran into more spirits as he went through death, not through life, but through the spirit world. And I would imagine as a spirit, you still learn things.
Oh, so like a more modern spirit ran across him or something.
And he associated with what he did in life. And it was a more accurate description than what he was.
And that's interesting.
Okay.
That's an interesting concept, and it's possible.
Because like a psychiatrist from the 1950s could also right now be called an LSD enthusiast. You know what I mean?
No, they love pushing pills on people. Yeah.
Yeah, that is still that is a term that would fit what they did. They were excited about those new drugs that were coming out and learning what they could do with them. And they were used in those hospitals.
And the side effects. So, coming in, now, I know you're First Nations on the Canadian side. Have you ever talked to Upper Skagit Tribe?
Yes.
And do you know, has their tribal land always been where it is now? Or has it ever expanded to Northern State property?
No, it never expanded. It retracted.
Okay.
They've lost a lot of land, but not on Northern State. That property was never theirs.
Okay.
But they have lost land on, I'd say, topographically both sides of it.
And we are going to break. We'll be right back, folks. Welcome back to S4 tonight, folks. We're on the last hour of the show. Time flies when you're having fun. So tonight we're talking paranormal in the Cascades. We're talking everything under the sun involving East Skagit, East Whatcom, East Snohomish counties, and some other topics. We have a special guest with us tonight, Jamie Justice, third generation up here upriver. Yeah. Go ahead.
I got one more little quip about Northern State.
Okay.
Kayla's great-grandfather was there.
Really?
His name was Henry Gibson. We can actually pinpoint the year he went in, and it was 1956. He is one of the lost. His family lost track of him when he died. They have no idea.
Huh. That's disturbing. Is there any way he was transferred?
No, he went in there for Alzheimer's and he stayed there. They were notified that he died, but no one can remember. It was Kayla's grandparents who were notified, and So her great-grandpa was born in the 1880s.
Okay.
And her grandparents were born in like the early 1900s, like 1906. So they were quite old by the time they had Kayla's mom.
Right.
And so by the time they were informed, they were already in their elder years. So no one really knows a whole history of it, but they do know that he stayed at Northern State and that he did die there.
Yeah, and I hate hearing stories like that because it just shows the corruption from back then. And you know, and Nikki's in the chat room and brings up an excellent point about the empath side, that maybe that they were an empath, and that's why they were locked up, because their abilities were confusing back in that time era.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that would help a therapist with their job to be an empath.
And she's
like if they were a therapist in life too.
Right. And she's wondering if that spirit, when they were alive, was an empath who repeatedly spoke of what was happening around them. And, you know, back then, you say you're an empath and you talk about, you know, things you shouldn't know, such as feelings of others and whatnot. No one really knew how to deal with it. And the paranormal issues around that person, and a lot of empaths can be looked upon as counselors, etc. now because they help people. And that's an excellent point, Nikki. You know, and that's why I love audience interaction when we do our show, because you know, there's no expert in this field. We always learn every case we do, and we always learn something new on the show. So, Northern State, yeah, very active location. Now, getting to Devil's Tower for a second, because maybe you can clarify. I actually know a couple teams that have been up there, and they described they went there after dark, and I don't encourage anyone to ever go to Devil's Tower, period, because it's private property now, and they're actually arresting people for going up there now, but especially after dark, that's just ridiculous. Now, getting on the security side of things, you know, Atomwaff Division, which is a terrorist organization, has been known to come up here and actually took a video of them with automatic weapons, also at Devil's Tower. But the team I know that went up there described hearing grunts and growls. No, it wasn't coyotes, it wasn't wolves. They describe a very large black dog-looking creature that actually followed them. And so if you've been up there, you walk along the road that goes up to the actual Devil's Tower. There's like a ravine or a drop-off next to the road, and they could hear something down below that was following them. They also described a Bigfoot-style creature, or Bigfoot-looking creature, that was up in that area. And that's also another Bigfoot hotspot. So, you know...
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The tower going up there, there's right by the dam where they do the fishing and stuff. It's a incline walkway. It's like what you would see a hospital room or something, and it's cement. It's got windows on the side and stuff. And you walk up it, and it's quite a long passageway, and then you get to the tower itself. And to visualize the tower for people who haven't been in there, if you can picture I think it's 3 stories. I'm pretty sure it's 3 stories tall, but it's completely gutted, and so you're walking on beams and things like that. And there's a big cement mixer right in the middle of it, and it is so dangerous and scary up there. It's not even funny. That thing in the middle. It's just, I'm not sure, it must have been the crusher itself, I'm guessing, but the way it sits, It's sitting on a rock ledge, and it's the rock ledge that faces Lake Shannon. And so it's this big tower with this cement mixer thing in the middle of it on the edge of a big rocky cliff that goes into the lake.
Yeah, I was looking at pictures of it today, actually, when I was getting ready for the show. I had like an hour between training and getting ready for the show, so I didn't have a whole lot of time. And yeah, it just looking at it, it looks dangerous to even go walking around. Let alone worrying about paranormal things. Just the safety factor of going up there is bad enough. Kayla is in the chat asking, so people say the theater in concrete is haunted. Is this true? So let's talk about concrete. So concrete itself was built on a crystal quarry. And just the fact that it was built on a crystal quarry, let alone the fact that the town burned down, and I believe was it the 1920s that it burned down? You've got a lot of devastation. You've got a lot of crisis type things where people actually died, and those spirits are stuck. Some of them want to be passed over, and we help them. Other ones don't want to be passed over, and they're not a problem, so we're not going to mess with them. There's a 20-year-old in the hub that died in the 1900s that's having the time of his life. Why are you going to mess with him?
If I was 20, I wouldn't want to pass over either if I was in a bar.
No. So, yes, the theater in concrete is haunted. It does have spirits in it. But what's unique and interesting about the town of Concrete, because if you've ever been to Concrete, it's all one long town. All the buildings are connected. And what you'll find, and I know Russ and S.J. Wells, the American Ghost Hunters, have actually investigated extensively, because they're up here, the town of Concrete. And they would go in one building, or one store, and they would find a spirit. And that same spirit would be down in, I believe it was the hardware store. And they'd find the same... boy. Yeah. And they actually found the same spirits. Say again?
That's the little boy that drowned that's in the hardware store.
Okay.
And it's the little girl that's in the hotel. And then I think it's there's a grown man in the hotel that makes angry, loud steps, and the theater is also very haunted.
But what you find is the same spirits, not all of them, but there's a couple of different spirits that actually travel. Kind of like there's a hallway or a passageway that goes through the entire town. And I think the little boy also goes upstairs in the bank. I think that's where they found him as well as the hardware store.
In many small towns before the 20s, there was tunnels throughout the whole town that went between each building.
Okay.
I wonder if it's possible that concrete before the fire had that.
And that's possible. Kind of like a hallway, like a one long basement.
Yeah, well, okay, so there is a tunnel from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, all the way to Chicago.
Okay.
And it was Al Capone's tunnels that he used to transfer his money.
Well, in the 1930s, concrete, it wasn't even called concrete then. I think it was still Baker, as a matter of fact. But it was a huge town. I mean, it was sprawled everywhere. If you were to look at old photographs of it back then in the 30s and look at it today, it is completely unrecognizable. So I would not doubt the tunnel theory or any of the stuff being connected or buried on or anything like that, because there was a lot of town that disappeared. That it burnt down.
Back then, Jamie, though, was it just concrete itself, or was there a bridge back then that extended out to Cedar Grove and Cape Horn area?
No. My dad had to ride the ferry back and forth. The bridge wasn't built until the mid 50s, I believe. I think it was the mid-50s when the Dog Bridge got put in. They used the ferry before that.
Okay, and real quick, I think Michael has left. Are you still with us, Michael, or are you about to leave? Okay, Michael's left.
Michael has left the building.
Yes, he has to get up early in the morning. So thank you for being on the show, Michael. I'm sure you're still listening, and we'll talk to you next week if I don't talk to you sometime this week. So next week I'll probably have some stories actually because it's my birthday party next Saturday. So
nice.
It'll be an exciting. Well, my birthday is actually Monday, but we're doing the party on Saturday. So it's going to be a very
Are the listeners invited?
There's not many listeners that are local, really, that are in the chat room or listening.
Maybe our guy from Honduras will come.
Or Russia. And we got to give a shout out. And we always love having, global listeners. And, I'm going to give a shout out to our Bobby in Honduras. And I'm still curious who's listening in Russia. That's awesome. So, Jamie, have you ever heard of? There's supposed to be a very unusual location in New Halem. That's kind of like a grave in the mountainside as you're coming into New Halem on the left side. Have you ever seen that or know anything about that?
No, I don't, as a matter of fact.
I've never checked it out. I've just heard, I get reports from people on occasion locally that you need to go check this place out. Well, I don't have time to just jump in the truck unless it's an emergency. If it's a UFO sighting that we're looking at right now, then I'm jumping in the truck and rolling. If it's a live Bigfoot report that's happening right now, I'm jumping in the truck and rolling. That's what the team does.
It really wouldn't surprise me because back when they were, it was in the gold mining heyday up there, Goodle Creek and Ruby Creek and all those places up there when they had the gold rush, they would have had to bury him somewhere.
I'm not sure if it's I'd have to go look. I think someone said it was a cave, but it's got a memorial type marker on it. So I have to go look at it.
Oh, we got to go find this summer, Eric.
Oh, we have a lot of plans.
I'm on it.
We have a lot of plans for the summer. A lot of plans for mountain expeditions, mountain camping, and whatnot, as long as we can get it done before the burn ban starts.
Oh, we love taking the kids, though, to New Halem.
Now,
it's a beautiful little area.
For any new local listeners that are listening, if you want an awesome short trail, great for the family, great for the kids, take them to, I believe it's the housing area in New Halem, and it's called Seattle Creek Trail. And it's washed out at one point. You can still cross it. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can still cross over it, and it actually goes up to one of the old abandoned gold mines.
Well, and even just going up behind the power plant there, during the summer they have a music and lights show that they put on.
See, I haven't ever made it up there.
It's a beautiful little, it's a good climb for a heavier guy like myself. But the waterfalls that are behind the power plant are just beautiful.
Well, they have lights behind them too, I believe, don't they?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and music that plays along to the lights.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely have to go up there because New Halem is very mystical just by itself.
And if you got kids, there's a train right in the middle of the park that the kids can play on.
And the deer.
We've got deer down here.
They have the pet deer by the train there.
Well, don't they have a moose up around Lake Diablo?
I'm not sure about that. I know they have all the little...
Where at?
At the viewpoint.
Okay. Yeah, just one lone moose. that's up.
Ah.
And yeah, and we're not even going to talk about Eastern Washington, but Winthrop, I think, is a cool little town. If you're local, if you're new, if you're a
Absolutely.
tourist, Winthrop. Growing up, my parents would throw me in the car and we'd go over to Winthrop, grab some ice cream, and come back home.
Yeah, and their porch their deck has that little all those little spray nozzles.
Mm-hmm.
That when it's hot out, that is the perfect place to sit.
So, okay, Nikki's got a question in the chat room. I don't know if it's a question or more of a comment, but when did the gold rush start upriver? Do you know any of that timeline, Jamie?
Yeah, it was the 1880s.
And did they come from California, or where did they come from for the gold rush?
They came from all over. A lot of them came from like Minnesota and the middle, right around the middle and stuff. Minnesota, I think it was, had a lot of people came from Minnesota for some reason. I'm not sure why, but the Cole family, I think it was, they came from like Minnesota or something like that, and there's a big story with them too, that it was full of espionage and murder and everything else up there, and hauntings from the old lady actually. But they just came from all over the place.
Okay.
Wouldn't have been a good gold rush if there was no murder. Just saying.
So, and these are hot spots that we do want to go up to. Hot spots that have had crisis, but nobody else goes to. Everybody talks about, I'm going to go to Waverly Hills, and I'm going to go to Northern State, and I want to go here. Well, what's the point? It's proven haunted, so there's nothing to prove, unless you just want to see a spirit, because you've never seen one before. It's like, okay.
I'd like to check out the dam.
Say again?
The dam is something the Diablo Dam is something I'd like to check out for that.
We can do that. Most definitely. Right down.
There's no way that there wasn't death at the dam.
Oh, there was.
I don't know a single dam that was built that didn't have someone die while building it.
Right.
Actually, writing concrete, 2002. When they were restoring the Henry Thompson Bridge, a guy died. He died in 2002. Yeah.
Where did he fall off the bridge?
I believe he did. Either that or he had a heart attack on the bridge. It was something like that, but it was right in front of the Shannon Dam there, the Henry Thompson Bridge, the one that they're always taking the pictures of.
Mm-hmm. So I've got a conspiracy theory to ask you about. And I got a report from someone in Cedar Grove that there are tunnels all underneath Cedar Grove. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, absolutely. And that goes back to Chris Kelly. No, there are not tunnels in Cedar Grove. As a matter of fact, it would be completely impossible because the ground in Cedar Grove, there is no way. But they said that the tunnel started in Cedar Grove, and it came up from underground in the garage behind Chris Kelly's house. And that was when he was running from John Hamlin and the rest of the sheriffs. That time he was wanted for these warrants and stuff, and it was just like a huge game, and it's big chase that went on and stuff. But there is absolutely no tunnels in Cedar Grove.
Okay. Yeah, I just, I hear stories, and I like to get clarification. Also, I've heard there is a missile silo on the backside of Sauk Mountain.
Oh, as a matter of fact, I was just talking to a friend of mine today about that. I believe it was his uncle that was wandering around up there, and I'm not sure if it was military he ran into personnel or what it was, but he was flipped around and escorted right off of there immediately.
Okay.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I've heard that. And, Steve
Area
Monchok...
52.
Indeed. But Steve Monchok, our drone operator, lives out of Darrington, but he's actually been on the top of Sauk with his drone, and been all over up there. What's funny with drones, though, because he is FCC licensed, he's got a FEMA degree and whatnot. So if they question him, he's got the certifications he needs for it, and his drone is top of the line. But what's funny, even with his drone, is his camera will black out if it goes to certain points. And there's supposed to be a government facility on Hickman Mountain. Does that sound right? It's upper.
No, not.
No, it's Upper Finney.
I'm not familiar with that at all.
Yeah, there's an area in Upper Finney that's got a military facility or a government facility. I won't say military, but also on one of the other ranges, there's a submarine sonar base that's very hidden.
No, I would say that would be like in the Darrington area. I have been all over Finney, Cumberland, all the way from Cedar Woolley through Darrington and stuff. Those are my stomping grounds, and I have been everywhere up there, way up in the high mountains, up in the deserted gravel pits, and there's some scary stuff up there, but I've never seen government. One time there was a Forest Service truck up there with it, and we were very well aware of any kind of personnel up there because we were riding flocks and stuff up there that we shouldn't have been.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not, if there was any kind of military anything, it would have to be like Darrington side. I don't think there's anywhere on the Finney Cumberland side that I haven't been. I've been through the paint mines and everything, and I've never seen anything like that.
And White Horse Mountain. Granite Falls has a lot of unusual activity that's going on. I mean, I've got a whole stack of UFO reports just from Granite Falls alone. Probably like
I've never been in that area.
No, I haven't either, and that's an area I want to check out because I've got like 40 or 50 different UFO reports over the last 20 years just in Granite Falls.
Are you familiar with Monte Cristo?
Ooh,
it's
yeah.
The little path with the ghost town on it. That's something you want to look up.
It's not a ghost town. That's a homeless community now, and not one you want to go around.
Oh, I just hiked it. Well, oh gosh, okay, it's been 10 years. Sorry, but yeah, it's a nice little hike. Time flies anymore.
It does.
But yeah,
it does.
Where is that located, though?
So that is that's at the end of Mountain Loop Highway. Actually, as you're going towards Vesper Peak, where Sam was missing.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that's and that little community actually came up when Sam was being investigated as missing. Which is why I say Monte Cristo, that's not an area you really want to go in by yourself. I would be prone to say I don't think Vesper Peak alone is one you want to go by yourself. Basically, because I think there's bad elements there, and two, there's a lot more missing people than we get told about. And if you look at Missing 411 with David Paulides, you'll find granite mountains are a very key element to these missing people that are, that vanish. So, and that's one thing I want to do. One thing I want to do with the team is get a map and do an overlay with the missing people, with the Bigfoot reports and the UFO reports, and see how much correlation is with all three of those areas.
You got to go up to Buck Creek, though, on the Seattle and visit that cemetery.
Well, yeah, we'll take you with us.
No, you know when you were talking about how Bigfoot is stealth and he can be real quiet, so he's undetected and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When you're standing in that cemetery, what it feels like is Bigfoot has done breathed the air out of that place. That's still, that quiet, and the air doesn't move.
And that's actually common for a lot of different paranormal activity. When you won't hear the birds, you won't hear the wind. It just gets completely still.
Nothing.
Yeah. And I'd like to get a hold of the Soxhuatl tribe anyway and find a storyteller. So if you have any, if you have any connections in the Soxhuatl tribe that would be willing to come out and talk, would love to get one of the elders or one of the native lore and have them on the show.
On that note, I would like to say to any of our local listeners that are thinking about taking some of these trails and going up to that area, do remember that it is a tribal cemetery, and be respectful to their property up there.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. And respect is just common sense, but I know there's not a lot of common sense today. But, respect culture. That's the big thing. It doesn't matter what culture it is, but respect is just paramount. I can't stress that enough, and that goes with paranormal hotspots. If it says no trespassing, then it's no trespassing. And when it comes to tribal land, especially, respect it. And you brought up an excellent point with people that want to come up here and are from the city and aren't familiar with the mountains to begin with. Just walking around the mountains with a bottle of water and not prepared is a bad idea to begin with. That's
Absolutely.
At a minimum, you want at least a 24-hour pack, and you want bottles of water. You want a fire starter. You want an extra set or two of clothes, a jacket, because the weather up here changes at the drop of a hat. It might be completely sunny and it can snow in an hour. Well, especially right now. Maybe not in the summer, but in the summer you want to watch.
Eric,
go ahead.
One of the big things is the quiet up there. You need to have some. If you're not packing a side on, you need to have something that's going to make a whole lot of noise, because you will be stalked up there. Whether it's by a cat, a bear, Bigfoot, an alien, I don't even know what all is up there. But there is something that, I promise you, there is something that follows you up there. I have been followed up there. I have been nearly abducted up there. It is a scary place up there.
Well, and you know what, Jamie, I imagined you are a person who respects the areas that you go into. Being from up here, I know you do. But for our listeners, just remember, if you don't respect areas like that, it's probably not the living you're going to have to worry about. Don't make FMP come save you.
No. Not even a little bit. And, when you're talking native land like that, skinwalkers are a very big creature that is involved with native land. And you can look through many different native cultures that all have their own variation of the skinwalker. And the skinwalker is essentially a guardian. Some say they're shapeshifters. You won't see them. You'll feel them. But they're very dangerous if you disrespect their property. So Markham, our scientist, is actually in the chat room. He couldn't make it on the show tonight. Work keeps him away all the time. And he's saying last summer when he was here, it went from hot to hotter at the drop of a hat, and the nights were nice and cool. And, I got to bring up Markham. I'm sorry, Markham. But Markham actually heard his first Bigfoot knock right here on Haystack last year. And it was very...
I don't doubt it.
What was cool, Jamie, is it was right there in the gravel pit. It wasn't even up on the
my.
mountain. It was in the gravel pit.
Oh, my.
There's nobody around. So it's nothing else. Woodpeckers have their own unique sound. I've been asked before, well, how do you know Bigfoot knocks aren't woodpeckers? Well, woodpeckers are much quieter than what a Bigfoot knock is. It's not a woodpecker. And what was unique about that particular knock, though, is it had tone to it. It actually did a kind of like a bump, 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 bump. It had tone, which I've never heard that kind of a knock before. And Markham looked at me and said, "Whoa, wait a minute. Is that what I think it was?" And I said, "Yeah, I can't think of anything else it would be." And he got excited because that was his very first ever Bigfoot knock.
Well, there's a gentleman of the name Brandon Gilbert, and he lives down in Cedar Woolley now, I believe. And he was working up on the mountain back behind the ranch, doing a logging job. And he came off of that mountain scared to death because he swears. He absolutely swears, and he's a very quiet guy. He doesn't BS, and he's not, he's not the person that would just lie like that. And he said that he saw Bigfoot, and it was right over by your neck of the woods, Eric, on Haystack. And he would not go back up and finish that logging job for nothing up there. And it wasn't that Bigfoot did anything, but he couldn't believe he actually saw one, and he didn't want to have any part of meeting one.
Well, I don't, and I know we have Bigfoot right here in our backyard. I know that. No, I haven't seen one. And it's hard to explain. It's hard to describe, but you can feel the energy of them. They're there.
Yes.
They are.
Actually, my mother-in-law has seen one, Eric. She has an experience, and at your birthday, she could probably tell you her story.
Okay.
But she has seen one in Washington. Her entire family actually saw it while they were camping.
Where, and that was here?
No, that would have been Swamp Campground near Cleellum.
Okay.
And they were near the top of the pass, I believe, when they saw it. So that's the I-90 pass. I can't remember what pass that's called.
Oh, okay. That would be Stevens Pass, I believe.
No, Stevens is 2.
Okay, so it's Snoqualmie.
Snoqualmie Pass.
Snoqualmie
Pass.
Right. So yeah, Markham's talking about our experience in the chat room, and he had his FLIR camera, and we actually saw an anomaly on the FLIR because we actually, like stupid people, went up there at nighttime. I don't like going on Haystack at nighttime. I really don't.
No way.
And I will not go up there. I will not go up there by myself. Even during the daytime.
Absolutely not.
Even during the daytime. But Markham and I went up there at night, and the feeling we got was just unnerving. We felt watched. We knew we were being followed.
Absolutely.
It wasn't by a cougar. It wasn't by a bear. I know the difference. We have bears and cougars up here. We know that. But we were armed. I will not go off my property towards the mountain without at least my 9mm. And that. Nope. Even to me, a 9mm is weak when it comes to a bear or cougar. Enough to
There's something out there.
Oh yeah, hands down. And like Markham said, he's more concerned with cougars than Sasquatch because, well, Sasquatch, and Gary could tell you his story. I do think Bigfoot will attack you if, one, they have young with them, and two, if you're doing something to disrespect their territory. They're very territorial creatures. I think those are the main 2 times they will attack. Other than that, they keep to themselves, and if you don't listen to their warnings, they will attack. There's been many cases of that.
Or if you don't have beef jerky.
Exactly.
To give them. Like if you have beef jerky and don't share, well, then you just deserve it.
Snap into a Slim Jim. But yeah. So Nikki says in the chat room, yeah, it's always good to carry when you're in the woods. At a minimum, like I said, I carry my 9mm. If it's hunting season, I take my 308 and my 9mm for a backup. And that's the only time you'll ever find FMP armed when it comes to paranormal investigation. We won't carry firearms to private investigations, things of that nature, ever.
Until I get a proton pack.
Well, that's different. That's not a firearm.
If I get one of those, I'm bringing it.
And Markham is
What
going
is
to
that?
make us. Markham's going to make us a proton pack. That's on his
Please
list.
tell me that's not a Ghostbuster thing.
It is.
Okay, it's not a
It is.
Ghostbusters
Are
thing.
you serious?
So
What?
Markham's going to make us a proton pack and a flux capacity.
That is not going to help you on Haystack, mister.
Oh.
It will as long as we don't cross the streams.
Pack a lunch.
So some of the scientific things we've talked about over the last couple of years is actually, and I don't think he's been able to work on it because we actually kind of forgot about this project, but taking a satellite dish, which everyone's got at least 2 or 3 floating around the yard because, you know, Dish Network,
Absolutely.
you take them down, and throwing it on the top of the truck and basically creating a glorified EMF meter on a
There you go.
larger scale. And you can use that, hook it up through a computer, and be able to track potentially Bigfoot, but mostly for UFO tracking. Because I'm curious if
Yeah.
you could track a UFO through any high-scale EMF, and I'm pretty sure you could, just by the electrical and the magnetic fields that they create.
Thoughtful, makes sense.
So, you know, that's why it's great having, even though we're not a evidence collection team, we still have 2 scientists on the team along with a therapist. So,
How much power
Yeah,
would you
we need a
for that?
therapist.
we do. Any team does.
Yeah, absolutely.
What were you saying, Cole?
How much power would you need for that, though? Like, how big of a range would you need to catch it? For a UFO, I'm saying.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, Marco might be able to actually answer that in the chat. I'm really not sure. We haven't looked a whole lot into this. It's just some basic discussion concepts that we've discussed over the last couple of years. So he's saying he's got the wave guides calculated, just needs time to work out the mechanics of it.
Okay.
So
Well, I have a satellite dish. Eric, come get it.
I've got a satellite dish right here, and I think Markham's got 3 of them in North Carolina.
And I was not joking. Take that therapist up there because there is something up there and it is scary.
Oh no! So our therapist works on psychiatric issues. She's only there for the psychiatric side of helping clients as far as the haunting side.
Now, see, I understand that part, but I was ready for a therapist after coming down off that mountain that night with the light up there and being followed by something. It was terrifying, like nothing I have ever felt in my life.
Oh, and I agree. Like I said, we went up there in the dark, and yeah, that was bad enough. And even if I'm hunting, even just going for a small hike to the top of the first range, I will take at least a minimum, take my kids, and again armed. And I remember specifically, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, our daughter actually heard it with me, and it was a very metallic sounding, almost like the downdraft of a helicopter, but there was no helicopter around. And it wasn't a bird. What was it? We have no idea. It kind of spooked both of us. And I don't get scared easy. But that one sounded very alien. And we weren't sticking around.
I'm not afraid of the dark, and I've wandered all over this ranch and stuff and everything. I don't scare or spook easily, but there is something on Haystack. I know there is. I've felt it, and the light that was up there, oh my God, that chased us that night, it was crazy. And you can feel it in the air, and there's places that there is no air left, and it is so spooky up there. It's not even funny.
And here's where the difference is. You talk about your normal logging road, and you might have one or two deaths. Over the course of 50 years, however long that logging road's been around. But when you're looking at a road like Haystack was a major thoroughfare at one point. And do you know when they had the ferry up and running? That would have been in the 1900s, correct?
Yeah, it was because my dad was born in 41, and it was when he was going to school and stuff, so it was in the 50s.
Okay. So more recent than I thought. Where was so back in the early days, they had the concrete plant on the north side of the river. Where was the concrete plant on the south side of the river, on our side of the river?
That I honestly don't know. I'm not familiar with that at all. But when you were talking about a thoroughfare there on Haystack and stuff, Haystack and Finney Cumberland, it was a thoroughfare clear back to prehistoric days. That's where they found the woolly mammoth tusk. That's where the old riverbed used to run and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there was a huge logging operation that was all over the backside of Haystack there on Finney Creek, and it had the trolley cars that zigzagged down the mountainside and stuff. There's a lot going on back there.
Okay, Markham, I know you're listening. That means we need to have a very high-tech metal detector.
Oh yeah, you can still see some of the rails, like parts of the little rail cars and stuff there.
Yeah, and I heard there's supposed to be a very small lake somewhere on the backside. Have you heard anything about that?
Just G Lake up there at the top.
That's too far up. I thought I saw it on a map from a long time ago. Maybe it's gone. Because I know there's also I know there's also underground springs not too far up that come down.
Absolutely. There's some back right behind our ranch. We've got the creek that runs down through there. They all come from underground. But Finney Creek has just huge spots where it comes up from underground into big caverns and stuff.
Okay.
Now, are these sulfurous hot springs?
No, the hot springs are up at Baker. But up at Finney, they've still got people up there that have their gold mines staked and stuff. There's one crazy old miner up there that actually shot at people because they were swimming in Finney Creek and he thought they were going to be stealing his gold and stuff. True story. That's up for Finney though.
Well, and there's elements all over up here. There's supposed to be jasper quarries. There's the crystal quarries there's crystal quarries in Walker Valley over in Big Lake as well. But you got gold, you got crystal, you got all kinds of stones and minerals up in these mountain range areas, which I do believe is one reason for the UFO hotspots. Because I do think some of the UFOs, some of the races are actually harvesting minerals.
Yeah, well, our hills are full of them.
They are, and that would be one explanation possibly for why there's so many UFO sightings up here.
There's diamond mines right up there, and there's diamond mines up in Marble Mount, and there's the gold up there at Ruby Creek and Goodell and that area. And then up at Baker and stuff, that's where you have the jasper, and you've got olivine there, the Hamilton area. Then there's talc. There's the talc mines that are up at like Jackman. ruby. There's ruby and garnets up there at Ruby Creek as well.
Now, how many of these mines are still active?
Well, there's some of them are still active on paper. Like my uncle has talc mines up there, but they haven't been. I don't think there's anything being mined at all anymore. But I think
has anyone actually pulled like significant amounts out?
No, not since, like for gold, for instance, it had the big rush like back in the 1880s and such, and they found a bunch of it, and then it pretty much stopped completely.
That's weird.
The government.
Yeah.
Now, Jamie, wasn't it on the backside of your property that you said they actually found a woolly mammoth?
Yes.
And I find that fascinating.
Like bones, or actually any of it preserved?
It was the full tusk, and I think it was like 18 feet. And it was a complete tusk. Yeah, it was a complete tusk from the part, I guess, it hit their head to the very point. It was in perfect condition. Washington University, actually, it was Bill Thompson and his son Sean Thompson, who I believe is a teacher up at the Concrete School District now, or at least he was. Both of them were. He found it on the way to school one morning, and they called the university, and they came, and it took them. They were up there for a few weeks digging around and trying to find stuff up there, and they preserved it completely. It was beautiful.
Do you know how insane that is that they found a full tusk?
Well, they had Blair Road there on South Skagit and stuff. They have full clams and stuff up there. We found a bunch of it. If you go up on Finney, Cumberland, you can find it up there as well.
But okay, so the woolly mammoths were around from the Mesozoic era.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with the Mesozoic era. So the last of the glaciers that would have ran through here to the ocean are about maybe 75,000 years after the Mesozoic era to finish forming these mountains. So it is amazing that they found a full tusk complete.
Yes. And like I said, it was Bill Thompson, who was a math teacher at the time, and his son Sean, who I think he was only 9 at the time. They were the ones that found it, and they found it poking out of the gravel side of right down by Devil's Elbow area.
Huh. Okay.
I actually have a question about that. Do you know, Jamie, why it is called Devil's Elbow?
Actually, I'm not sure. The only thing that I can even hazard a guess is because of the bend right there where the log jam hit it really hard, and it has eroded most of Oak Mills Field.
Okay.
And
that's a guess.
Getting to that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting term to use for part of that road.
Good.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's kind of odd too, because if you go on that area of the highway, the highway goes right to the river, and it's on a big rock cliff, and there's only a couple other small rock formations in that area, but that one, the whole corner sits on a huge rock.
Okay.
And that's in the Devil's Elbow area?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's right by McKing Hole. Fishing.
And I'm reading the comments in the chat. And, Nick, you said earlier, getting to the psychiatrist side real quick. So the psychiatrist would be good for the team members as well. And, yes, the team's actually used Francie for our own issues as well in dealing with client issues, because dealing with 10 or more cases a day, which is our normal caseload, and kind of woke Cole up real quick as to how much work we actually do each day. It does become a strain sometimes on the team, dealing with specific areas of what we deal with. So she is a huge asset, and something I encourage, any paranormal team, that it is highly recommended you find someone in the psychiatric field as an asset for your team.
A question on that. Your 10 cases a day, are you talking like hauntings and possessions and such, or are you talking UFOs, all of it, or what's happening 10 times a day?
All of it. And you got to understand what the team does is global, so I'm not talking locally. I'm talking globally.
Right.
We deal with cases Australia, Ireland, South Africa, Egypt, the whole spectrum. Most of it entails the haunting side, spirits, passing over spirits, dealing with entities that are more malevolent.
Okay.
Not so much possessions. Possessions are actually very rare. But, malevolent entity attacks are more common. People that wake up with bruising, with scratches, get pushed, things like that. Or even just...
Yeah, that's what I was curious. The book back in the 70s, The Entity, I think she was a Spanish lady, or I think her name was Maria something or other, and she was being attacked every single night. She had the bruises and bites and claw marks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 of those a day.
Again, you get people that argue. They argue that, I've got 3 scratch marks, and that means it's a demon. No, it doesn't. Angry spirits can scratch just as much as a demon can. And so not everything is a demon.
I was going to say, if I'm getting scratched and bit in the middle of the night, I'm not going to care whether it's a demon or, what it is. It's a bad thing, I'm guessing.
it just, the argument is, demon is always the first thing they jump into, and it's paranormal TV that encourages them to do that.
So what do you do?
So the astral team will go in and actually assess what it is, and if it's a spirit, they can communicate with it. They can encourage it to pass over. And usually it's simple as that. If it's a malevolent entity, they find the root cause of it. Why is it here? Because what some people perceive as malevolent isn't always malevolent. And I always think of the troll case where they actually came into our dimension accidentally. They didn't want to be here any more than the client wanted them to be there. And so we basically just had to open the door up for them, get them back home, seal the door, and the case was closed. So we don't just like to jump in and kill what's there. We find out what the root is, find out where it came from, why it's here. And
you can kill them?
Yes, you can.
Oh, I thought they would already be dead.
They are, but essentially you send them back where they came from.
Okay.
Whatever dimension.
So it's like exorcism?
Essentially, yes, but not.
Not in the terms of the Catholic Church that you would think of exorcism as that you've seen on TV. It's not like that.
Yeah. How do you learn that?
Trial and error. Experience.
So you guys are like essentially Ghostbusters then.
Oh, don't say that.
That's how I explain it to my kids.
More protein packs coming on, guys. Come on now.
but we don't have a pack.
Mike's getting ready for one.
Anyway,
like Eric said, it is a wake up. It was a wake up call to see how busy this team is. It was weird when Eric added me to our team messenger service, and I'd set my phone down for an hour and not look at it, and then an hour later walk back to it, and there's 400 messages.
Oh my gosh!
Like, yeah, and then trying to sift through that to actually see what's all going on. It was pretty wild, but and it's not always like that. Like we do have dry periods, but the
Very
team
rarely.
does a lot, and each member of the team does something for the team.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
we are at
Hey, Eric, this is Gary.
Say again?
Hey, this is Gary. You want to go a little bit longer than a little bit after 2, like 2:20?
You know what? Let's go 2:15. And
Okay,
actually, I
great.
have to shut down my Spreaker, so actually, no, we need to go ahead and call it a night because I've got 36 seconds left. I can only go 3 hours on Spreaker here, so we do have to call it a night. We will carry this conversation on, though, on other shows, so it's not a big deal.
You got it.
So, on that, folks, thank you for listening. Thank you, Jamie, for coming on the show. Great history lesson. Was an awesome show tonight.
I enjoyed it.
And thank you, Cole, for coming on, as usual. And next week,
Absolutely.